Hello comrades, I am here with Comrade Max from CPGP-ML, Communist Party of Great Britain, Marxist-Leninist, and it will be interview about Poland, because Comrade Max 1 year lived in our country. So, let's start. First impression, what can you say about Poland?
Well, it's a beautiful, well-built country, nice, generous people. It's it's still quite, I think, quite a good place to live. It's good on holiday, but it's also a good place to live relative to other places in Europe. However, my situation was definitely not average. It was not normal. Maybe we can start with this. One of the reasons I enjoyed living in Warsaw is that I have a British passport and I was able to find a job that pays more than average. So I get to it. I was a teacher. I was a maths teacher, and in the school where I worked, it was I don't speak Polish, so it was an international school. I was teaching in English, and the native English speakers would get much higher salary. So if the Polish teacher would get around 5,000-6,000 zloty gross, I was getting above 10k gross, so like double almost, which is insane. And I totally understand that for Polish workers, if they want to live in Warsaw, teachers in the public sector, for example, they earn, I think it's less than 5,000. It's like 3,000 to 4,000 or something. And the rent I was paying for this year, it was 2,600 zloty. So basically a normal teacher's salary, and then if you add bills, close to 3,000 zloty in rent for two people to live in the city in basically an flat with one bedroom flat. And this was almost 3,000 zloty. In fact, the price now, since we moved out last month, the price for the next tenants is going to be 3,000 zloty. So the state sector teacher salary would be the same as the rent. Then the prices, the bills have gone up a lot. The price for basic goods when we go shopping in Biedronka or some other shop, we used to spend more than 100 zloty, which is like 20 pounds, 20 to 30 pounds on a shop for a week. And we noticed this going up as well this year. So yeah, if you're on minimum wage or normal salary and you don't own your own home and you have to pay rent, or you don't live with your parents and you have to pay rent in the city in Warsaw, I honestly don't know how people put up with it. They must be living, sharing with lots of people. Quality of life must be terrible for a lot of Poles. And it's very strange that there's this, rather than Polish people, I'm grateful for this because I am British, so I'm grateful that there is not hostility and resentment towards native English speakers, at least as much as there could be. Not that it would be right, but it would be understandable. Yeah. Do you have any question? to lead me.
Yes, my first comment about this situation is that I go out from Poland in 2013, and I see a lot of changement from the time when I lived in Poland. If I could understand now, the foreigners in Poland have a better situation than Polish people. Firstly, we had this situation of the migrants from Ukraine, which had public transport free and a lot of public stuff and social things totally free. And so they are better treated by the state than the Polish citizens. And also, your example shown that the citizens of UK also are better treated than Polish citizens. So I always thought that the patriotism is something that the citizens of your country is better treated than foreigners. And in Poland, we have very, very patriotic government who talk about patriotism 24 hours, 7 days in week. So, and this patriotism is that the foreigners are in better situation than Polish nations. For me, it is suicidal politic. That is something I don't know if in Great Britain is the same things.
In Great Britain, no. You might. I mean, we do have the NHS, which does not discriminate. Basically, anyone can come and get treated. They don't check your nationality before you get free medical treatment in UK. This is one good thing, but there definitely isn't. You will not find the situation that I had at work, for example. And I'd like to highlight that it's different from the Ukraine situation, because in Poland there is this kind of difference being British. I don't want to say this, but it's like people trust you. You are British, so you must have money. You must be, educated or something. Therefore, I can trust you. You haven't come here to steal. You haven't come here to take my job, even though I kind of did. But somehow there's this double standard. There's a different way of looking at a richer Western country, and it's probably not just the case with British. It would be the case with Americans as well, of course, and maybe to some extent Western Europeans, like maybe French. But with the Ukrainians, this is different, because it's not that that a school will pay you more because you're a native Ukrainian speaker. It's that the state is actually, without asking the Polish people, without any kind of referendum or way to gauge the public opinion, they are allocating public funds, meaning every Polish person that's paying tax, this is now going to treat Ukrainians and give preferential treatment to Ukrainians, right? So Poles were subsidizing the public transport and the healthcare and so on, all these public facilities for Ukrainian refugees. And I don't want to downplay the plight of Ukrainian refugees, but if you are informed about the war in Ukraine, you know that it's happening in the Donbass. Most of the fighting is happening in the Donbass, and most of the Ukrainians who are really suffering in this war are suffering in the east. These are mostly Russian-speaking Ukrainians who were against the 2014 coup, and they are much more likely to go to Russia to seek refuge. they don't go to Poland and to the West mostly. Of course, there are some exceptions, but for the most part, they don't. The Poles that came, the Ukrainians that came to Poland are by and large from West Ukraine and Central Ukraine. And these areas did not only not experience any fighting, but they have not experienced any disruption, not even power cut, not even internet shortage. I mean, they have normal life in Ukraine, so they've come to Poland. Yes, they were scared. I'm sure they have reason to be worried and so on. But it was announced on the radio in Poland this year that in the Easter holiday, half of the Ukrainians, the initial flood of Ukrainians, something like 3 million, who came into Poland, 1.5 million, roughly half of them, went back to Ukraine to spend the Easter holiday with their families. So that tells you about how safe it is in where they come from in Ukraine, West Ukraine, and that there is not a difficulty to cross the border, and that they're making everyone feel really guilty, like everyone should help the Ukrainian refugees, but these, what they call Ukrainian refugees, you cannot compare these with the ones in East Ukraine who Russia is helping. Yeah, this is a totally different situation. You cannot compare them with the refugees that were trying to enter Poland from Belarus last year. That Poland sent the army to stop them from crossing the border into Poland, and this was not millions. This was some thousands, a few thousand. It was not even that many, but it was a big scandal. So there's a huge double standard when it comes to refugees in Poland, and back to this question of being British and the looking up to the West. I mean, most Poles seem to think, and now that we're talking about national sovereignty, most Poles seem to think that the USA is not occupying them, but it is protecting them from Russia, or something along these lines. That the USA, they have their bases in Poland, they have their armies and soldiers and tanks in Poland, and their weapons there, and this somehow helps Poland to be independent and sovereign. And this I don't understand. I think even a child can understand that if a foreign army comes into your house with guns and tanks, and they are much more powerful than you are, then you are not independent. You are not sovereign. And so many of these decisions, and Poland's lack of national sovereignty, which we see in the way that Ukrainian refugees are treated, and how basically the Polish citizens themselves, they are like almost like second class citizens in their own country. They are below the Ukrainians, who get preferential treatment on one hand because of this conflict, but they are also below the richer Westerners who come to their country on the other hand. And this is not through the state, but the part about the West is not through the state and through law, but rather in people's psyche. When I was working at the school I was working at this year, I was able to pick up a Polish history book and have some things translated for me, and it actually explained in the Polish history book that there are first world countries, second world countries, and third world countries, and it placed Poland as second world country, so middle tier. So you have Africa is third world, Poland, Eastern Europe, maybe the periphery is the second tier, and then you have you know, Britain, France, and the USA, who are the first tier, you know, top nations, and this way of thinking, I don't know. I think you can feel it in the Polish psyche. Not for everyone, of course, but it's not a nice thing to see. I would like it to change one day.
You talked a lot of things that I wanted to ask you, and you already said. So, could you, like British citizens, could you say something? Could you make a comparison between Britain and Poland toward war in Ukraine? Because in Poland, in every place you can find the Ukrainian flags and stuff like this. If in the England and Britain is the same things, that in every building you have Ukrainian flags.
So I haven't actually been to Britain since February this year, since it started. So I can't say from my own experience, but talking to people there, my mother, for example, she told me that at the beginning, after February, lots of Ukrainian flags were seen on cafes and businesses, and people, you know, putting them out on the balconies and stuff. So going around London, she could see lots of Ukrainian flags. But some months later, around end of spring, start of summer, she said that they started pulling them down, and you don't really see many anymore. In contrast, in Warsaw, where I have been during this time, there were flags everywhere, but it was coming from the state. It was not private businesses, cafes, and restaurants only putting up the flags. It was governmental buildings. It was public spaces. And this I find shocking. I find this disturbing and wrong. That in the places where there should be Polish flags, they put Ukrainian flags. Very often, in most cases, both together. And it was a mass, in Poland it was on another level. It was like a mass wave of propaganda or visual, like, marketing to get the idea of Polish and Ukrainian unity or something into people's brains through you know, through repeated exposure. And it has carried into the private sphere as well. Lots of individual businesses and people with Ukraine flags, and you see some Ukrainians very often in Warsaw walking around carrying a Ukraine flag. It has changed a bit since May or June this year. They had, in the tram, for example, they had a Polish flag and a Ukrainian flag, and they've taken away the Ukrainian flag from the trams. Maybe there are a little bit less now, but the state, it's in the public spaces, you still see them in Poland, and you still see them from people, even this summer, just before I came here to France. So yeah, it has not really gone down in Poland. I hear that it has gone down in UK and other places. Also, when I was traveling through Germany to get to France, I saw maybe one Ukrainian flag. I really did not see many at all. A few more in France, a bit more in France than in Germany, I would say, but it's nothing like in Poland. Yeah, in Poland it's insane. The Ukraine flag, you cannot escape it. It's everywhere you look, there are Ukrainian flags. Advertisements, they use billboards that are, you know, for advertising. They use it to advertise Ukraine flags. There are giant Ukraine flags all over the place as you drive on the side of the road. You know, saying Slava Ukraini and help free Ukraine and all kinds of slogans. it's very dark.
And what can you say about rising prices in Poland? Because you lived in 1 year in Poland, and in this time the prices are growing and growing. And for example, could you explain the viewers from abroad, which I don't know a lot of Poland, some things about coal? That Poland is one of the biggest producer of coal. Was in the socialist time one of the biggest producer of coal, and now we don't have coal in Poland.
Okay, so with the prices, I mean, I noticed that my shopping bill seems to be getting more expensive, but this is not a really precise measurement, I can say. What was more precise is I used to drive to work every day, 40 minutes there, 40 minutes back, and I could track the fuel price. So I can talk about the fuel price, you know, petrol. And this, when I first came to Poland last year, I believe it was 5.50 per liter, 5 zloty 50, 5.5. And now it is 7.50 approximately. It's above 7 now, as I was coming here. Depending, you know, the price varies a bit. If in the city it's a bit cheaper, on the motorway it's a bit more expensive, and so on. But it's more than 7 now. So that is it's a very significant increase. And as far as I'm aware, the government, current government, they took away the tax on petrol. So they have reduced the price by the amount that it used to be taxed, which of course is affecting the budget. It's reducing the state's income, and I don't know how or when they're going to put that tax back on, because it will cause a sudden increase in price, and I don't know how people are going to put up with it. About the coal, from what I know,
or gas or other.
Okay, so the bills, for the bills, electricity and gas, it was a bit shocking that I actually I didn't lose, but I paid my deposit. So I was living 10 months in a flat in Warsaw, and 2,600 zloty was the deposit, and for 10 months of bills it cost this much, actually a bit more. So 2,700 zloty was the cost for 10 months of electricity and gas, which I can't compare with what it was before, because I never lived in Warsaw before, but I have a feeling that is quite expensive, and it was a shock for the landlords, because they were not expecting it to be so high. You know, when we made the contract, there was talk of some estimate of what it might cost, and it was much less. So yeah, the bills are going up. Energy cost of electricity is going up through the roof, gas as well, and this is not just in Poland. You know, this is in UK as well. It's I think it's all over Europe at least. And then the coal, as far as I'm aware, the European Union, with the whole green, you know, the whole green agenda, they pressured Poland, who used to produce a lot of coal. They pressured Poland to stop producing coal, and they, to a large extent, they have. But of course, they needed to replace the energy. So Poland was buying coal from Russia. At least until recently, they were buying cheaper coal from Russia, and the bit of coal that they produced themselves, I might be wrong, but I think they were selling it. So their own coal they were selling to Slovakia or Czech Republic or some other countries in Europe. And the coal that they used themselves for energy they were buying from Russia. And in Warsaw I live next to a power plant, and I could see this chimney and the smoke and stuff. So it was a real operating power plant that operates on coal, and this coal was coming from Russia. And I'm sure that they are trying to stop Poland from buying coal from Russia, but I don't know what alternatives they're going to find this winter.
Okay, my last question is what can you say to the Polish anti-communists who earn in Poland minimum wages, and their religion is anti-communism, and they are very proud of their anti-communist, and also they are proud that Polish state is the anti-communist state, and after you British communists came to Poland and you earn 4 times more than the Polish anti-communist.
I can say that this religion of anti-communism, it's understandable because you see lots of people, anybody can call themselves a communist, and people can call themselves communists and they can be very annoying, they can say very stupid things. I, as a communist myself, I want to see the Polish people being proud of their country. I want them to build their country with their own work, and I want them to keep the benefits of what they work for. I don't want to see Poland having to, as a country, as a nation, I don't want to see Poland having to follow orders from any other nation, right? If Uncle Sam says do this, Poland should be able to say no and say no, we will do what is in our interest, maybe more similar to what you see with Hungary and Viktor Orban, which I know some Poles appreciate when they look at Hungary. I want, Poland doesn't have colonies. It doesn't have colonies. It is a much more homogeneous society. It's not cosmopolitan like Britain or France or Germany. And I understand that Poles, a lot of Polish people, they like this fact and they don't want it to change, and that is okay, and it shouldn't. If you don't go around bombing other countries and setting up colonies, then it helps you to stay homogeneous and not have lots of refugees coming in. These are separate questions. Mainly, I would tell them to not be so, try to not be anti-communist as a religion, and try to listen to people's arguments. If they're communists and they say things you don't agree with, reject it. But if they happen to be communist and they say things that you do agree with, and they are not pushing you away, don't push them away. Listen to them, because it is my belief that, and we spoke about this earlier, that in the 21st century nowadays, people who are nation-minded, people who value their nation, real patriotic people, who want life, simple request, they just want a good life for them and their countrymen and their nation. They just want prosperity for their nation, and they're proud of it. For these people, the problem that they see in the world today, many call it globalism. They call this globalism, and they naturally want to resist that change that they call globalism, and they push against it. And meanwhile, you have communists, and communists are fighting against something that they call imperialism. And imperialism and globalism are really part of the same thing. It's really the same process, the same phenomenon, and we just come from different sides. We use different language to refer to things, but we really have a common enemy, I believe: communists and nationalists. And I firmly believe that it is the future, that to succeed in this struggle in many countries, we need to unify, we need to ally communists and nationalists. This is something that I think we have seen happen in Russia and China, and these countries are going to be in a much better position this winter. I don't think it's a mere coincidence. I think there's a lesson historically to learn from this as well. This alliance against imperialism and globalism. So I would say that to Polish workers who hate communism, or think that they hate communism, I will still call you comrades, and with respect. I would like it if we can work together to achieve our common goals. I won't use communist words. It doesn't matter to me. What matters to me is that nations can be sovereign, first of all. That no nation is manipulating another one, stealing from it, spreading its ideas onto other nations. This is what I'm against. So.
Okay, thank you.